Good day. Good day out to our viewers and listeners, wherever you are. And welcome to the TIHA website Archival Conversations. My name is Victor Mukasa, and I am your host for these very important conversations. TIHA stands for Trans and Intersex History Africa website. And this is a website, a platform that is dedicated to documenting and preserving the history, experiences, and contributions of trans or transgender and intersex individuals, people, organizations in Africa and across, and those who are in the diaspora across the globe. So I welcome you all to today's episode, a conversation that I'm having with a very, very phenomenal activist from the beautiful country of Kenya in East Africa. Uh, this activist is a long-standing activist, has been around for quite a long time. He's a comrade, a colleague in the past, and currently serving in some of Kenya's uh, uh, wonderful organizations. So for 15 years, Barbra Wangare has been a tireless advocate for the trans community in Africa, starting from humble beginnings in the Kenya trans movement. She's currently serving as the executive director of EATHAN, East Africa Trans Health and Advocacy Network. She'll be telling us more about that. She's also a founding member or a co-founder of Jinsiangu, another great organization in Kenya. So without delay, I will introduce and ask Barbra to come onto the stage, and we begin our coffee conversation with her as we document and archive that part of our histories as transgender people in Africa. Thank you. Barbra, please. Hello. Hello, my sister from another.
Hi. Hi,
How are you doing
Victor.
today?
I'm doing great.
Did you find your coffee?
I did. I found my coffee.
Cheers to you. Let's enjoy that coffee.
Cheers.
We have this conversation. Thank you so much for showing up today and for agreeing to contribute to this great work of preserving our histories.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I tried to introduce you earlier on, but the reason why I don't fully read everything in one's bio is because sometimes I leave out very important information. And I request you right now, Barbra, to go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners out there.
Well, as you mentioned, my name
Mhm.
is Barbra Wangare. I am a trans activist from Nairobi, Kenya, in East Africa, and I've been doing this work for the last 15 years. I started back in 2009. I am the executive director of EATHAN, which is the East Africa Trans Health and Advocacy Network.
Mhm.
We are a network of trans and gender diverse activists and organizations based in East Africa. We currently have 34 members span across the 5 East African countries: Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda. We have plans to expand to the rest of Eastern Africa, including Ethiopia, South Sudan, DRC, and the rest. So, yeah, that's me. As you also mentioned, I'm one of the people who were in the early days of Jinsiangu. In
Yes.
fact, the name Jinsiangu was coined by me.
Wow.
Yes,
That's
before
ve-
that, they had a different name.
that's very important to know. And
Yes,
that's
and
very important
Jinsiangu
for
means,
us as a trans people, but also for the African LGBTQ movement. Yeah.
yes, the name Jinsiangu comes from two Swahili words that say jinsia yangu, which means my gender in Swahili.
Jinsi is gender.
Jinsia is gender, and yangu is mine, my gender.
Jinsiangu. This is very important. I've known Jinsiangu, but I didn't know what that meant. I knew what Jinsiangu does, but in terms of the meaning of that, is a very powerful name for that organization. And I hope that we get a moment to talk about those beginnings. And I think that we will. So before we
Yes.
dive deep into, getting these stories from you, Barbara, if you could start off by sharing about your beginnings in the trans rights movement in Kenya, like what sparked your passion for trans rights and what were those early days like? Must be very interesting because I grew up in that area.
Yeah, yes, yes. So this is 15 years ago. This is back in 2009. So I've always known that I was trans, and I transitioned in 2009. And the thing that made me transition was I got an opportunity to work at TIHA
Yes.
as an intern. And I joined TIHA as an intern, and I joined as myself, and I used that opportunity to transition. And I grew through the ranks in Uhai. I started as an intern, and then I went on to get an employment position, and I spent I think 3.5 years at Uhai. I left in 2012.
2012. Right.
Yeah. And the movement at that time was very small. There was only one organization running, which was the Transgender Education and Advocacy, that was run by
Ye-
Audrey Mbugua. Yeah.
Yes.
And Audrey, in fact, is the one that recommended me to apply for the position at Tuhai. If it
Right.
wasn't for her, I don't know how my trajectory would have been, to be honest.
Audrey is a pusher of the trans agenda. She wants
Yes.
trans people to be heard and be in every space on the planet. So I am not surprised about that. We'll be bringing her here one day to tell, that's those stories. But it's important to note that trans people have had to fight in very, very you know different ways in order for our voice to be heard and for us to have you here as a trans woman who is very instrumental in the human rights movement in Kenya because you are a human rights defender. Yeah, more about those beginnings. If you could tell us more about how life was, how organizing was like before even you joined, right from before you joined Uhai.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was a very interesting time for trans people
Mm.
because we were just being like, I think we were just coming out because I think no one knew anyone else who was trans. People were there, people like Samantha were
Yes.
there, but in terms of a trans person that had transitioned in
Hmm.
specifically,
Yeah.
we were not that many. We were not that many. Yeah. And the organizing was centered around support groups. The organizing was centered around legal issues. I know Audrey spent a lot of time doing legal work. She's the one who pushed the Kenya National Examination Council to change her name in her certificate. And she's the one who also pushed for trans people to be able to change their names legally. So, and this was done in collaboration with other activists. And
Yeah.
then Jinsiangu came up in 2012, 2013. I can't really remember.
Mm.
And yeah, Jinsiangu was like this different organization. Our mission was around supporting the membership, supporting trans people. Audrey was more focused on the legal wings, right?
Right.
And I feel like we didn't feel like we could do the things we wanted to do while at T. So that's why Jinsiangu was born.
Right.
And Jinsiangu was born by two people. that is Gulit Amakobe, who
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, now residing in Canada,
Canada, yes.
and Sydney Etemesi, who's an intersex person from Kenya who is now working with Jinsiangu.
Right.
So those are the two pioneers of Jinsiangu. But before I came in, it was called Ushirikiano Panda.
Shirikiano Panda?
Yes, which is Swahili for, I don't know. Ushirikiano, I have to Google this.
Mm-mm. We will go with my gender, Jinsiangu.
Yes, so Ushirikiano Panda was the name.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came in, I was like, it doesn't really fit, like what we envision as an organization, as a movement, as a
Right,
community,
right.
because it was saying Ushirikiano, let's climb together type of thing. And I
Yes.
was like, the organization needs to have an identity that means to who we are. And that's how
Mhm.
I coined Jinsiangu, and it was accepted.
Yeah.
And we changed the name, and we registered as a CBO. We
Interesting.
started applying for funding. And at that time, we were doing support groups in each other's houses.
Right.
So, like this month, we'll go to this member's house. The next month, we'll go to this one. I remember the time we coined Jinsiangu, everyone was at my house. So it was exciting times. There was a lot of hope, a lot of visionaries who
Right.
wanted to see great things happening for trans people,
Yeah.
and
So
especially around.
would we call Jinsiangu the second transgender organization or kind of
In
organization?
Kenya.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
it was the second. Yeah.
Okay. And so, wow, interesting. That's why these conversations are very, very important for us to know where things come from. Before Jinsiangu, there was, I mean, I've been there for more than 2 decades, coming to 3 decades.
Mm,
And during our time in the early 2000s in Kenya, like in the rest of East Africa, there was no
mm-hmm.
discourse on gender identity. We had the T in our acronyms for the organizations, but it meant no.
Yeah.
Those of us who were transgender didn't know about those terminologies, so we were butch lesbians and effeminate gay men.
Mm,
But I remember that as we started looking deeper into gender identity in Kenya, we had organizations already like ISHTA, MSM,
mm,
that were led by transgender people who were beginning to come out as transgender, like Emmanuel Kamau and Ivy.
yes, anti-V, yes.
Do you, I mean, where were you at during that period? And
In in 2000, I was in school.
don't make me
I
feel so old.
was in school in 2000. I left school in 2005, my dear.
2005. So
Yeah.
it's very important for us to connect the work that the anti-Ivies did to
Yes.
you, Audrey, and Samantha, because the first UHI conference, which was where the conference that you have every year in Kenya,
Mm,
is
mm.
called
Every 2 years.
Changing, Changing Faces,
Changing Faces, Changing Spaces
Yeah,
conference.
the inaugural,
Yes, yes.
actually the inaugural
Mm,
during the inaugural conference, that is
yes.
trans people first forcefully forcefully not violently
Mm,
but forcefully took their space on the stage
yeah.
of that conference. And I remember there are so many young trans people at that point, probably your age now, but uh,
Yeah.
young. And when I heard of T, I saw that a lot had changed in Kenya, and it is very
Yes, because
amazing that
T started in 2008.
2008. So
Yes.
it makes a lot of sense and is very important information to see that right now we have a network. Is this network of EATHAN a network of trans organizations?
Yes,
Only trans
we
organizations?
are a network of trans organizations and activists. So we have 34 members. Jinsiangu is a member. In Kenya, we have, I don't know how many organizations in Kenya. Maybe like 10 in Kenya. There's like 15 in Uganda. There's like
Amazing.
5 in Tanzania. There's 1 in Burundi, and there's like 5 in Rwanda. So
That is more history in the making.
I yes, a lot of history in the making.
Yeah, and so during this period you've been around, you have witnessed a lot of struggles and witnessed major milestones. And Kenya is
Yeah.
one of those countries that has had seriously big milestones, especially
Yes.
could you please tell us some of those achievements that the trans movement in Kenya has achieved, like have arrived to, like the in
Mm.
legal area, but also socially and elsewhere, if there is.
I mean, one of the things that Kenya has right now is access to medical services, gender affirming care, which is mostly private. So, for example, the reason why like I'm able to look like this in a transition and everything is because I've had access to hormones, hormone replacement therapy. There's been a little bit of access to surgeries. So some of these things are accessible as long as you have money.
So it is
In
legal to access, like it is
it's
recognized by the government.
No, it's not recognized by the government. It's
Okay,
private. This is
but
private.
there is accessibility if you have the resources.
Yes. The
And
other
how did
thing,
you guys arrive to that, to the fact that they're
it was I mean, everybody has to try something. So like for example, the endocrinologist that we found, Audrey is the one who found her. And then she referred her to me. Continued referring. So all these referrals, that's how they work.
okay?
Referring each other to a particular doctor. So there is more than one endocrinologist. I think there's 2. So
Yes,
you can go either or. And this is in Nairobi. So that means if you're a trans person in a different city, in a different town, you
yeah,
still have to travel to Nairobi to seek these services.
right.
Um, Access to name change is something that we have achieved as well. Um, at the time when I was changing my name, this was back in 2010. It was not yet. It's legal to change your name, whoever you are, as a Kenyan. The problem was
Mm,
that we wanted to change our names from a male sounding name to a
right,
female sounding name,
right.
right?
Yes,
And that was not allowed. It was bringing red flags. Audrey
right.
tried and it didn't work.
Yes,
So what we did when Audrey went the first time, she went in with and changed her name to a Kikuyu name, a local name.
okay.
So it wasn't clear that this name was for a male person or a
Feminine or
female
masculine.
person.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it went through. You see, the gender marker doesn't change. The
Okay.
name is the one that changes.
Okay.
So we went through, she was able to get her gender marker did fall, and she was able to have a document that says she has changed her name legally.
Wow. When was
She
that?
went, this was in 2009 or 8.
Okay.
And so she told me to try the same thing. In 2010, I went through the same thing, and that's why I changed to Wangare Muruga. And I was able to do that as well. It took a whole year.
Right.
It took a whole year because I think in 2011 is when I was able to get my passport with my actual name.
And the gender marker was
The gender marker is still the same. It's still
okay.
male.
Okay.
It's still an M on my passport.
That's a battle that you guys are still.
Remember that we've been able to change legally on the passport, but we've not been able to change legally on the ID.
The national
So
IDs.
the national ID, we've met challenges, and that's where she started working hard to get the government to make to allow for changes. She would make applications, write letters to the department that is responsible, and she would get rejections and rejections. Eventually, she went to court, and the court had her case together with other persons, other trans persons who applied on to they applied as a joint application, and the court um, made a judgment and ordered the department to allow for trans people to change their name. You get what I mean?
So it was a court order.
It was a court order. This
Right.
was I can't remember, 2013 maybe,
And
2014.
did that set precedence for the rest?
It did. So
Yes.
all the people that were on that list were able to change their names on their IDs.
Wow.
And then we who were not on the list of the people who petitioned also started going to apply for changes of name in our ID, and we were successful. But the gender marker still remains the same. And on our IDs, the gender marker is written male, like the full name male, not like in the passport where it's just an initial.
An M, yeah.
Yeah.
Still very problematic.
Yes. So change of name, and also your photo is also taken. So that means when you give someone your ID, they see your face and your name. So if you're lucky, they won't see your gender marker.
Right. It's about luck still. The struggle continues. And have there been any other milestones? We know that Kenya has been, the more socially has been a little bit more lenient than the rest of the East African states.
Yes.
What challenges are trans people still facing visibly facing in Kenya? And if you are able to point at some of the ways in which you have dealt with these challenges to reduce the amount of pressure on the community.
Yeah, so I can give an example. When I was transitioning, I lived in an apartment somewhere in Nairobi, right? And my neighbors and my caretaker all started noticing that I was changing, and they started questioning and asking me what's happening, because they'll still call me my dead name, right? And I would give excuses and say funny things. Eventually, I was looking very different. I was looking more feminine, and I was identifying as a woman, and I'd put on hair, and so they saw a girl, right? And so they were very confused because they were like, "This is the same person. This was this boy who was living here, and now he's dressed as a girl." And so I had to move. And the day I was moving, they banded up together with garage workers, mechanics that were working next to the building that I was living, and they wanted to undress me. And the person who saved me was a lady who was selling food to me every night. I would go to a shop and buy food every night from her because I didn't want to cook for myself. And she's the one who saved me. I got into the van where my food, my stuff were, and I left, and I've never gone back again. And ever since, I've never had major issues. It's called the privilege of passing, I guess.
That's true.
And so, in terms of the reason why I'm sharing this story is because for a lot of trans people, as long as you're not passing as the gender that you are, you have problems with society. People will question you. People will point fingers. They will gossip about you. Sometimes you'll even find physical violence. We've seen stories of people who have met physical violence because of the way they look. And it doesn't discriminate. It's the cases we've seen. For example, there was this girl called Erica who was engaging in sex work. And so we don't know how she died, but she was dumped. Her body was found dumped on a ditch in some road somewhere in Nairobi. And we don't know how she died. The autopsy came back inconclusive and stuff like that. So those are the challenges that trans people have to face. Either you identify as trans, as if, for example, if you're a trans woman, but you live your life as a male version of yourself.
Yeah.
If you're a trans man, is slightly easier because dressing up in male clothing for women is not frowned upon.
That's right.
The problem becomes when you express masculinity.
Yes.
You're expressing masculinity, and for trans people, it's very hard to hide
Yeah, it's
who
very,
you are. It's
yes.
very hard to pretend to be something that you're not,
That's right.
as compared to others, I guess. For
Mhm.
me, I think trans people face it the worst.
Right. No wonder
So you can't hide who you are.
we become the
And
face in the
yeah,
face of the sexual minorities movement. Barbara, are there any protections right now in Kenya, legal protections for trans people? Like if you reported these cases?
no,
No,
no.
still a
You
struggle.
can't even report because they will laugh at you. They'll put you in jail. They'll say you're the one who's tempting people. They use laws like vagabonds or loitering or impersonation. So you have to be very careful as a trans person. You have to really avoid being caught by the police because it will be really bad for you.
Tell me something. I've been working with LGBT IQ refugees from mostly Uganda and Rwanda that have fled into Kenya. And a number of them are transgender people. And speaking to some of them, they have had more chances of survival in Kenya than in Uganda. Why is that so?
Yeah, because the Kenyan society tends to look the other way. People tend to keep to themselves, mind their own business. They might point fingers, they might discuss you. Like I know for one of our colleagues here in the office, she was also transitioning while we're in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
And she was being seen by people in the area where our office is. And so there's like I think one person who's always like pointing fingers and being like, that's the one that transitioned, but never really anything physical, any violence or any kind of that. So it is easier in our society, especially in Nairobi, because people are tend to be more educated and learn how to keep to themselves.
Right. I
Yes.
guess that's what has caused, people to feel a little safer, relatively as compared to when they're in Uganda. It has always been like that. Where were you at the times of the this big event that actually outed the Kenyan LGBT movement?
that was
What's it
that
called?
was the second Changing Faces, Changing Spaces conference that was in 2009.
That was the second one.
Yes. So what happened was,
Yeah.
and I was in Wuhai at that time, so I was one of the
Uh,
interns,
uh
and the conference happened at the Hilton Hotel,
Yes.
and then there was an after party,
Hmm.
and people went in drag and dressed up, and
Basically,
for
they
some
slayed.
they slayed, right? And I remember it was the first time I wore this skimpy, tiny top and pants, and because it was 2009, it was literally the first month of my transition.
Wow.
So I didn't feel as feminine as I
Yeah.
thought I would, but
Yeah.
I took my opportunity and ran with it and enjoyed myself. We pole danced, we did all kinds of things, but
Wow.
then someone took photos, and those photos ended up in the newspaper,
Uh,
and that's how people were outed.
that's how it happened. So you were one of the people in the newspaper.
No, I wasn't. I
No,
was
you.
lucky. I survived that.
Yeah. Well, this is very interesting, and I could talk to you for forever. I still have lots of questions, but I will cut it down so that you go back to your busy schedule, and our viewers also can take in what you're sharing so far. Ethan, Ethan, what is Ethan doing around all the challenges that are still in the region and are even growing, because there are more challenges than there were before with all these legalization and further legalization of homophobia. I hate making homosexuality and transgender identity illegal, but it is basically the legalization of homophobia, because
Mm,
people are being given the power to do whatever they want with us
mm.
in these countries. And it's great that we have Ethan today and bringing all these organizations together. What is Ethan doing in the region? How have you equipped yourselves for this battle and challenges that are coming in and are ahead?
Yeah, so at Ethan, we focus a lot on supporting our members.
Hmm.
That is the major mandate of
Hmm.
ours. We provide technical support to our members in terms of the applications, when they make applications to funders, when they make applications to conferences. If they're doing proposals, we help them look at it and spruce it up. If they're doing budgets, we do that. We also conduct capacity strengthening initiatives, so lots of trainings. You realize that one of the challenges that trans organizations face is capacity, lack of capacity. A lot of donors complain that trans organizations don't have capacity
Hmm.
to handle funding. So we worked with our members to build their capacity to be able to fundraise and get funding and handle the money and being prepared. And so lots of trainings on proposal writing and budgeting, lots of training on management of funding and financial accountability, things like that. We also do research and documentation. So we have a resource hub. It's resourcehub.ethan.org, and it's a space where every kind of resource exists. If you want information on transitioning, if you want information on legal gender recognition, if you're looking for research from other organizations or other company or other networks or anything like that, if you're learning about gender identity or sexual orientation or anything like that, if you're looking for sexual reproductive health and
That's
rights
a very
issues,
important That's a very important
so
resource. Do you mind saying it again so that our team in the studio can put it up on the screen for those who might just want to put it down? And I think that we didn't have such a resource before. That's a very huge development. Comrade in the studio, do you mind writing that down on putting it on the screen so that the viewers can see Resource Hub? How do you say it, Barbara?
I have typed it in the private chat,
Okay.
resourcehub.ethan.org.
All right. If we can have that on the screen for our viewers, that will be great. For trans people out there, does this also include intersex people? Is this
Yes,
a
it
source
also
of their
includes
information?
intersex people. So
Wonderful.
all information about gender identity,
Hmm.
gender expression, sex characteristics, all
Yeah.
of it exists in that resource hub.
Amazing.
It also includes our publications. We've done research. For example, our latest research was on legal gender recognition and access to trans affirming healthcare in
Wow.
East Africa.
Wow.
We gathered data on the challenges that trans people are facing in East Africa in terms of legal gender recognition and
Mhm.
access to gender affirming care. And all that information is available on our website. We are using that to create policies, create projects and activities,
Wow.
pushing for policy changes in legal gender recognition, pushing for policy changes in access to gender affirming healthcare, HIV care, and more, and so on and so forth. Um, we also do regional and international advocacy. So advocacy at spaces such as the African Commission on Human and People's Rights.
Mm-hmm.
We are currently in a partnership with organizations such as GATE, Asia
Mm-hmm.
Pacific Transgender Network, TGU, um, RFSL, and ILGA World in a project called the UN Trans Advocacy Week.
Mm-hmm.
And the UN Trans Advocacy Week is a partnership that brings together trans activists from across the globe to
Mm-hmm.
attend the Human Rights Council in Geneva in June
Wow. Wow.
and to engage with diplomats, engage with the system, provide statements in addressing reports from special rapporteurs and
Mm-hmm.
independent experts.
Mm-hmm.
So many things that are engaging during 1 week in Geneva. And we, as EATHAN, are responsible for bringing at least 2 activists from East Africa to attend, to participate in the UN Trans Advocacy.
That makes me smile from inside so deeply, because, as you know, I have been there, I have seen it all. The fact that the organizing is getting to even that level is a very, very huge achievement. And I thank all of you, your teams, both in Africa and elsewhere, that are trying to push for this. Thank you so much, because then we all feel represented, we all feel defended, we all feel held by all of you. And as we end, Barbara, is there anything that you wanted to share in terms of history, something that you feel that is worth noting down in our histories that we have not tackled today, whether in your personal life or the lives of others or for the movement as a whole?
I mean, I think as trans people in East Africa, we are resilient. I think we are resilient. I've seen so much resilience in my membership.
Mm.
I've seen so much growth in our membership. I've seen so many activities being done. Like for example, Jinsiangu is in a network in Kenya, the National Trans. I forget the name. National Trans Advocacy Network, which is a network of trans organizations in Kenya,
Mhm.
doing really amazing work around legal gender recognition and doing research.
Mm.
Seeing work in Tanzania with the government in terms of accessing healthcare and HIV, especially HIV as an entry point, ensuring that trans people can access HIV services,
Is
even when the government is still clamping down on LGBTI persons, including trans persons. So there's still things going on. I've
wow.
seen um, work in Burundi towards legal gender recognition that is like starting out, and we are supporting them in educating them and helping them learn about approaches and ways to engage with government in terms of legal gender recognition. So there's so many things that I'm proud of from the work that my membership is doing. And I'm really happy that I get to contribute to their growth and success as a network, as an organization, and as an activist. And it gives me joy to see different trans people thriving. You know how hard it is to transition. So every time I hear someone is needing help with hormones or mental health or anything like that, I'm willing to help as much as I can, because I want to see people thrive. That's like my goal.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Barbara's journey is full of resilience and passion, and she has used that to contribute to the East African, not just Kenyan, East African trans rights movement, and is serving in the capacity of executive director of the network that brings together trans organizations in the sub region. Thank you so much, Barbara, for your contributions to this process, to this archival process. And one thing was going on in my mind that all the history in East Africa is seated at EATHAN, because EATHAN holds a lot of people that actually hold these histories. That means
Yes.
you're going to see TIHA at your desk so many times trying to
Yes.
get those histories from different people and members of your network.
We would love to partner with you,
And
Victor.
we send you with all the warmth to our siblings, all of them in East Africa. Please tell them about TIHA and how we are documenting those histories and preserving them, and that they should also go to the website and look at the histories of the rest of the continent. Africa is rich. The African trans movement is rich when you look at our histories. And thank you so much, Barbara, for being a part of it. Thank you so much for showing up.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I loved it.
Amazing, amazing. You can go and have some coffee with our producer. Finish that coffee. Uh, we'll find you all. Yes, to the rest of our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for sitting with me as we listen to Barbra Wangare, Executive Director of EATHAN in East Africa, with the headquarters, I think, in Kenya. Um,
Yes.
and in one of those many episodes that we plan to bring you regarding the archiving of trans and intersex histories in Africa. Please tune in every time you see our posters. We have a different African trans person sharing their stories. We give thanks to those who have supported this website, to include the other foundation and Astrea Foundation. They make us able. They give us that power behind to enable us to come and do this work here online and also in the background. So thank you so much, everybody. Tune in next time. My name is Victor Mukasa, and I was happy to be your host on the show today. Au revoir.